Hey guys, this is Miss Arlequin, and in today's lesson, we're going to talk a little bit about theme. So I want you to think about what makes a story really linger in your heart and your mind long after you've read that story. Often, besides the interesting characters and interesting story, it's the idea on which the story is built, which is another way of saying the theme of the story. Theme is the central idea or the insight about life or human behavior that a story reveals. So an example of a theme might be a story which teaches its readers that living a simple life leads to greater personal freedom. Or a story that teaches its readers that the deepest loneliness is sometimes felt when we are among friends. In most stories, the theme is not stated directly. There's not going to be a sentence at the end of the story that says the theme is, or the lesson we have learned is. Stories that do that are usually stories that are written for very young children, because very young children have a difficult time figuring out the theme or the lesson. They need things directly told to them. But more advanced stories are going to expect readers to figure out the theme on their own. Now, there are certain universal themes. When something's universal, it means that it applies to a great number of people across many different cultures, across many different races, across many different personal or cultural beliefs. So different writers from different cultures often are going to express similar themes. There are things that are universal in this world, ideas that are universal. So a theme is going to usually be a generalization about life or human nature, something that is very general that can apply to a great number of people, a majority of people. And there are certain types of experiences that are common to all people everywhere. Everybody experiences love, everybody experiences death, everybody experiences fear, hunger at certain points in their life. So those are things that you can relate to no matter what country you are living in. Universal themes tend to come up again and again in literature, and they deal with basic human concerns like good versus evil, life and death, love and loss. And what they can do is they shine a light on our common experiences, and they help us see that there are connections between us and other people in the world. We're not the only ones who are feeling these things or experiencing these things. They can guide us through our lives. So let's actually have a little practice with some universal themes. So for our quick check, these are some very common, well-known children's stories. The Little Red Hen, Beauty and the Beast, The Three Little Pigs, The Ugly Duckling, and The Frog Prince. So I would like you to see if you can match the themes on the right side of the screen with the story that it is an appropriate theme for. So it would require that you know these stories in advance. If you don't worry. I'm going to reveal the correct answers in a moment. So the first theme is that it pays to work hard and plan ahead. And the second theme is that appearances can be deceiving. Which theme matches which story? And as you can see, there are two themes, but 5 stories. So some of these stories actually have the same theme in common. Okay, now time to reveal the answers. You can see The Little Red Hen teaches us that it pays to work hard and plan ahead, while Beauty and the Beast teaches us that appearances can be deceiving. All right, so when you're finding the theme, I want you to keep the following guidelines in mind. The theme is not the same thing as the subject. The subject is simply the topic. It can be stated in a single word such as loyalty, romance, death, loss, fear. Those are all topics. A story could be focused on that topic, but then the theme is going to elaborate on that topic. It's going to make some kind of revelation about the subject, and it's usually expressed in a sentence or two. So the topic of loyalty might be developed in a lesson or a theme, such as loyalty to a leader is not always noble or a good idea. Sometimes you shouldn't be loyal to your leader. Sometimes you need to question them. Writers are often going to express theme through what their characters learn. You want to think when you're reading the story, does the main character change? Are they one way in the beginning of the story and then through their experiences, they grow, they change, maybe their personality or the way they look at the world? Does the character realize something that he or she did not know before? Conflict can also help reveal themes. So you want to, when you're reading a story, identify the conflict and figure out what exactly the main character is facing. What is their conflict? What are the obstacles that are standing in their way? How does that conflict get resolved? So you want to look at the way the conflict develops, the types of things that the character does to try to overcome the conflict, and in the end, what does the solution actually end up being? So let's look at an example conflict. Let's say you have two friends who find a wallet. One friend wants to return it to the owner and the other wants to keep it. The resolution of that story might be that they return the wallet and they share a small reward. Based on that conflict and the way they chose to actually solve that problem, what lesson can we learn from it? If we were ever in a similar situation, what can we learn? So we might say that the theme is people are often rewarded for making the right moral decision. All right, so sometimes the title is also going to help give you some clues as to the theme. So you want to think about the title carefully. Does the title have a special meaning? Does it point to the theme? And theme is usually going to apply to the entire text, not just one part, not just the beginning, not just the middle, not just the end, the entire development of the narrative. So if you think you have a theme statement, a sentence that kind of sums up the lesson, you want to test your statement of the theme and ask yourself, does it apply to the entire story? Or is it really only one particular chapter or one scene from the story that lesson is being taught in? Keep in mind that there's also no single way to state the theme. People can express the same theme using different words, and a story can have more than one theme. There may be different opinions about what the main theme is, and the most meaningful literary works often have more than one theme. So again, as long as you can support your theme statement with evidence from the text, then that's usually going to be a well-developed theme or a well-chosen theme. All right, let's do a quick check. Here we have a synopsis or a summary of a classic short story by the author Saki. It's called The Interlopers. And let's see if we can figure out what the conflict is, how it's resolved, and what the characters learn. Because of a feud over a piece of land, Ulrich and George are bitter enemies. One night they encounter each other on the disputed land. Each thinks of killing the other. Suddenly, a huge tree falls and pins them both under its weight. At first, the men threaten each other. After a while, however, they notice each other's suffering, make a pact of friendship, and look forward to being rescued and living in peace. Then they are attacked by wolves. In your notes, I'd like you to jot down what the conflict of the story is, how it's resolved, and what the characters learn. You can pause the video here in order to complete those questions. Okay, so time to reveal the answer, and I'd like you to put a check if you were correct and an X if you got it wrong. Remember, this is just practice. The conflict is that two men are fighting over a piece of land. They put the feud behind them when they're both facing possible death. And then what do the characters learn? Well, if you wrote that survival is more important than land ownership and letting go of hatred feels good, then you got the theme of this story correct. If you wanted to state the theme, you could say, if you wait until tragedy strikes to make peace with your enemies, you may not be able to enjoy the rewards of forgiveness. Because clearly, these characters were not able to. All right, so when you are figuring out the theme of a story, you want to make sure you're making a judgment, that you're evaluating the theme. Don't just accept that the lesson of the story is valid just because the author wrote it and that's their lesson. You want to ask yourself, is this story's view of life too simplistic, too simple? Is it too idealistic? When you're idealistic, it means you're really hoping for the best in life, but maybe it's not realistic because life isn't perfect and people do make mistakes and they don't always do the right thing. Is it too cynical? Somebody who's cynical always is looking at the bad side of things and thinks the worst is going to happen. Again, Not everybody in life is going to choose the wrong path or make the wrong choices. And so being cynical is not really giving people credit or a chance to do the right thing. Is the writer trying to push an idea that does not reflect real life? Again, if the author is going to try to teach a lesson that everybody in life is a liar, well, that doesn't really reflect real life. Not everyone in the world is a liar. And so they are taking their own personal perspective and using it in the story. But it doesn't really match everything and everybody in the world. All right, so let's practice making a judgment. We have 3 themes on the left side of the screen. And in your notes, I would like you to evaluate them. Do you think this is a valid theme or a valid life lesson, or is it not valid? So on your notes, I want you to number the page 1, 2, and 3. And then for each of these numbers, write valid or not valid. True love solves all of life's problems. Is that a valid theme? People who have a lot of money or power are sometimes greedy for more. So for theme number 2, do you think that's valid? Is that something that could apply to a majority of people? Does it make sense? Number 3, people who do good deeds will be happy and will not suffer. Is that a valid lesson to teach people? Is it true most of the time in life? If it's true most of the time, that would make it valid. If it is not true most of the time, then it's not really a valid lesson. Okay. So number 1 is not valid. It's too idealistic. Number 1. Number 2 is valid. It's very true to life. And number 3 is not valid. Again, it's too idealistic. It would be a perfect world where people do good and they're always happy and they don't suffer. But we know that bad things can sometimes happen to bad people. All right, so now it's time to practice. I want you to think of a story that you've read that had an impact on you. So choose a favorite story of yours. If you can't think of a favorite story, you can choose any story that you've read recently. It could be something we've read in class together, something you've read for independent reading. And then I want you to create the following map in your notes. So put the title of your story, the main topic of your story. Was it about loyalty? Was it about death? Was it romance, love? Was it about war, friendship? And then I want you to list how the main character changes throughout the story, what the conflict is and how it's resolved, and what you think the title suggests about the lesson. And then finally, what do you think the overall theme of the story is? Please bring your notes from this lesson video to class tomorrow. We will be working more with theme, and we will be sharing our practice, specifically this chart that you're making right now, with our partners.